Hello, Algebra 2s. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do factoring cubes. Okay, it's factoring the sum and difference of two cubes. So there's a pattern to this, and the pattern pretty much just has to be memorized. Okay, so the pattern is you take the cube root, which is A, the cube root, which is B, and you keep the sign. Then in this trinomial, you're going to take the square of the first, the square of the second, and then the product of these two, A times B, AB, but always a different sign. Okay? So I'm going to show that again over here. Okay, you're going to take the cube root of A cubed, which is A, the cube root of B cubed, which is B, keep the sign, and then square the first, A squared, square the last, negative B squared, and then the product of these two, A times B, is AB, but opposite sign. Okay, so here we go. First problem, I'm going to take the cube root of x cubed is x. The cube root of 27 is 3. Keep the sign. And now, in the trinomial part of the answer, take the first term and square it. Take the last term and square it. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. That will always be positive, that third term. And then the product, x times 3 is 3x, but the opposite sign, plus 3x. That is your answer. If you do it properly, this will always be prime, this trinomial, so you're not going to go any further. That's the answer. Okay, so let's do the next one. Cube root of x to the third is x. Cube root of 8 is 2. Keep the sign. And then square the first term, square the last term. The product of these two is 2 times x is 2x, but keep the opposite sign, and this last term is always positive because it's the square. Okay? Next page. Cube root of 27x to the third is 3x. Cube root of 8y cubed is 2y. Keep the sign. The trinomial to follow is 3x squared, so 3x times 3x is 9x squared. The last squared is negative 2y times negative 2y is a positive 4y squared. And then the product, 3x times 2y is 6xy, opposite sign, is a positive 6xy. Okay, and again, this would be prime, so you don't have to go any further. Now, before I move to the next one, every one of these, we should always be trying GCF first. That's the first thing you learned. Or dots first, and these were not perfect squares. Okay, so then we would try this cube for the binomial. So the reason why I say that is because this right here does have a GCF. So the first thing you should be doing is pulling out the GCF of 2, which gives me y cubed plus, divide by 2, and we get 64. So now I have the 2 comes down. I know I'm going to have a binomial times a trinomial because both of those are perfect cubes. The cube root of y cubed is y. And the cube root of 64 is 4, not the square root. Okay, keep the sign. And then the first term is y squared. The last term is 16 because it's the square, and then I do the product of these two as the opposite sign. Again, it's pretty quick and easy if you memorize that formula. okay? And then that whole thing is the final answer. You do need the 2 in it because it was a factor. You can't just forget about it, okay? All right, number 5. There's no GCF. Okay, nothing goes into all 3. So, all 2. So we're going to look at this and say, okay, if there's no GCF and this is not a difference, it can't be dots, we're going to try cubes. So the cube root of 9a cubed, there is no such thing. The square root of 9 is 3, but 9 does not have a cube root. So because you cannot GCF, and you cannot do dots, and you cannot do cubes, if you cannot factor it, the answer is prime. Okay, number 6, GCF first, and there is one. We have 7. And if we factor a 7 out, we get this. Don't worry about it not being in descending order. That's fine. Keep it in that order. Bring down the 7. And now I recognize this to be a cube again. So cubes are always a binomial times a trinomial. Running out of room. Cube root of 1 is 1. And the cube root of x cubed is x. And we keep that sign. Make sure you keep them in that same order. Then square 1 is 1. Square negative x is a positive x squared. And then the product of the 2 opposite is x. That whole thing is the answer. Make sure 7 is in it. Okay, now, everybody's freaking out because we have a fraction. Do not freak out just because it's a fraction, okay? So when we're looking at this one, there's no GCF. This as a cube root is x. Keep the sign. And now what's the cube root of 1? 1. What's the cube root of 8? 2. It's not hard just because it's a fraction, okay? Now let's get our trinomial. So the first term squared, okay, is x squared. And then the last term squared is 1 times 1 is 1. And 2 times 2 is 4. And it is a positive. And then this product as an opposite is simply 1/2 x. Done. Just because it was a fraction, no problem. Okay? And if you don't remember, you could always put it in here, the calculator like that. It will give you more than likely a decimal answer, but then you could always change it to a fraction, in your menu. Okay? Although being put in as a fraction, it'll probably give you the fraction 1/2. Again, just because it's a decimal, don't let it freak you out. Check it out. Cube root of this in your calculator is simply going to give you this. So if you remember on dots, I told you if you have an exponents you take half, decimals you take half. So now if we're doing cubes, decimals you take 1/3, exponents you take 1/3. So if I have 3 decimals, 1/3 of 3 decimals is 1. But again, your calculator will do that for you, okay? So I'm going to have x plus 0.1, and then the square of x is x squared, and 0.1 squared is 0.01. And again, don't make a silly mistake. Just put it in your calculator if you need to. Okay, you're allowed to use them. And then 0.1x. I know you all know how against calculators I am, but for this stuff, just go ahead and do it, okay? All right, so that was our cubes lesson. Hopefully we can memorize that formula, okay? All right, comment that you watched it, comment that you understand it, or if you're still having difficulty, just let me know, all right? Any problems, I will respond, or we will work with it some more tomorrow in class, okay? Have a great night. I will see you later. I'm going to go ahead and put up day 7 for you now, okay? Bye.